Welcome to this masterclass on the behavioral psychology of child hygiene. Look, if you're a parent, an educator, or a care professional, you already know the drill. Daily hygiene routines can, and frequently do, devolve into these high-friction battles. But it really doesn't have to be that way. In this premium professional training, we're going to move away from demand-based parenting and step right into structured, evidence-based instructional methodologies. By the end of this session, you'll possess an elite toolkit of advanced execution strategies designed to completely transform hygiene from a daily struggle into a self-managed, lifelong habit. Okay, let's dive into this.
We have to begin with a massive foundational paradigm shift. The problem is rarely the child. The problem is almost always the teaching approach. The absolute crucial point to grasp here is that hygiene resistance isn't just stubbornness or defiance. Actually, it's usually a gap in our instructional methods. See, we often teach hygiene as a chore, or we just bark it as an order. But children, they learn through play, structure, and routine. Once we upgrade our approach to match how they actually process the world, the resistance naturally drops.
Here is the high-density curriculum we're covering today. We'll break down the psychology of resistance, move into environmental sensory optimization, explore gamification, detail specific protocols for oral and respiratory health, and finally, map out the 4 stages of absolute hygiene independence. Let's move to our first core concept.
Section 1. The Psychology of Resistance. Understanding the root causes.
Before we can apply any kind of professional solution, we absolutely must diagnose the root cause of the friction. If we don't understand why a child is fighting the process, our interventions are just going to fail. Now, for many children, especially those with sensory processing differences, autism, or ADHD, the bathroom is quite literally an overwhelming environment. The sound of rushing water, the slimy texture of soap, those abrupt temperature changes, that causes genuine sensory overload. On top of that, tasks like taking a shower require a lot of complex executive function. Gathering supplies, lathering, rinsing, drying, it's a multi-step sequence that can be surprisingly difficult to manage. Plus, kids prioritize immediate play over the abstract long-term concept of health. If we don't give them a clear, immediate why, their motivation just plummets.
So how do we bypass this resistance? Well, we have to completely change our language. The old way relies entirely on demands. Brush your teeth now. And what does that do? It triggers an immediate power struggle. The new professional framework uses controlled choices. Would you like to brush before or after putting on your pajamas? Notice how the hygiene task itself remains absolutely non-negotiable, but the child gains a sense of agency and control over the process. This single psychological shift drastically reduces friction. Section 2. Sensory Optimization and Environment. Engineering for Comfort.
Once we understand those psychological barriers, our next step is to physically engineer the environment to instantly de-escalate anxiety. And listen, micro adjustments yield macro results here, particularly during bath time, which we all know is notoriously stressful. If the sound of rushing water causes anxiety, simply fill the tub before the child even enters the bathroom. To prevent water from stinging their eyes, grab a silicone rinse cup with a soft edge that presses right up against their forehead. Wait to drain the tub until after they've left the room to avoid that frightening gurgling noise. Try dimming those harsh overhead lights to calm their nervous system, and have a pre-warmed towel ready to go to eliminate the shocking transition from warm water to cold air. What you're doing is intentionally engineering predictability and comfort.
For children who struggle with executive function, or really just the abstract nature of germs, visual systems are incredibly effective. Utilizing visual vocabulary templates for concepts like exercise, healthy, hygiene, and germ helps them map abstract health ideas into concrete, understandable pictures. When kids can actually see the sequence and grasp the vocabulary, it completely eliminates the guesswork and the anxiety of what's coming next.
All right, Section 3. Gamification and Behavioral Anchoring. Making Habits Stick.
If we want to transform these routines from dreaded chores into self-sustaining habits, we have to integrate high-engagement learning tactics. By anchoring the behavior to play, we're basically deploying a high-density toolkit for specific tasks. For hand washing, use the glitter germs experiment. Put a tiny bit of glitter lotion on their hands and have them try to wash it off with just water, then with soap. It visually proves exactly why 20 seconds of scrubbing is necessary. In the bath, instead of just washing them, make them a bubble scientist observing bubble shapes, or create a treasure hunt where finding a submerged toy means washing a specific arm or leg. And for hair care, reframe brushing as being a tangled detective. You're giving the routine a proprietary-sounding mission that literally commands their attention.
Now, at the very core of this gamification is story-based learning. This is an absolutely critical framework. When you introduce characters, like fighting the cavity critters on their teeth or washing away the mud monster, you're doing way more than just playing. You are providing a psychological dress rehearsal. Stories let kids practice the hygiene task in their heads first, which makes the real-life physical action so much easier to execute. It builds an emotional connection to cleanliness that a dry lecture simply cannot achieve.
Moving to Section 4, the Oral Health Protocol, Preventing Battles and Decay.
Dental hygiene is universally one of the most intense battlegrounds for caregivers. So let's look at how to optimize this specific routine. First, we need to understand the stakes. 51 million. That is the massive number of class hours missed annually by U.S. children due entirely to poor oral health. Tooth decay impacts speech, self-esteem, and even academic success. So this isn't just about keeping a routine, right? It is about protecting their fundamental developmental trajectory.
To ensure complete compliance, we deploy specific, tested tools. Want to teach the mechanics of flossing? Have kids use yarn to pull Play-Doh out from between the pegs of Lego blocks. It perfectly visualizes plaque removal. For brushing duration, leverage technology. Apps like Tooth Savers turn brushing into a game where they're scrubbing away a sorceress's spell. The Disney Magic Timer reveals a digital sticker over 2 minutes of brushing. And Brush DJ plays exactly 2 minutes of their favorite music, buzzing every 30 seconds to remind them to switch sides. These tools build muscle memory and drastically increase brushing duration.
Section 5. Respiratory and Hand Hygiene. The Germ Prevention Systems.
Beyond the individual, we have to establish systems that prevent the spread of illness in shared environments, like homes and classrooms. To stop respiratory droplet transmission, we use a highly memorable framework known as the vampire cough. Instead of coughing into bare hands, which they then use to contaminate toys, door handles, and their peers, children are taught to cough into the inside of their elbow. It physically looks like a vampire pulling a cape over their face. And because it has a fun, imaginative name, children adopt it quickly, without feeling like they're just following a rigid rule. But the vampire cough is only part of a larger, unbroken loop. The complete protocol actually requires 3 steps. Step 1, the child must actively turn away from others, which teaches spatial awareness and respect. Step 2, they execute the vampire cough into the elbow. And Step 3, the non-negotiable final phase, washing their hands with soap for 20 seconds. By teaching this as an unbroken sequence, children internalize the entire cycle of hygiene responsibility.
Section 6. The 4 Stages of Independence. The Ultimate Roadmap.
Everything we've discussed so far leads right to this final module, building total, self-managed independence. The ultimate goal is not to bathe your child forever. True independence follows a proven 4-stage developmental progression. Stage 1 is observation. The child simply watches you model the correct behavior. Stage 2 is participation, where they begin to pitch in with small things. Stage 3 is guided practice. They perform the task while you supervise and correct. And finally, Stage 4 is self-management, where the routine is internalized and they just do it without reminders. You literally cannot skip these stages. You have to intentionally graduate the child through each one. And these stages naturally map to specific age groups. For toddlers ages 2 to 4, the focus is pure exploration, imitation, and simple sensory games. From ages 5 to 7, they enter participation, and they really thrive on visual charts and storytelling. But as they hit adolescence, your strategy has to pivot. Hormonal changes bring body odor and acne. At this stage, self-management means you step back. You provide access to essential tools, like deodorant, facial cleansers, and menstrual products, and you communicate with profound respect for their privacy and their changing bodies. Okay, let's quickly summarize the core methodologies of this masterclass. First, always diagnose the underlying sensory or psychological friction, never assume they're just being defiant. Second, engineer a physical environment that's highly predictable and comfortable. Third, utilize storytelling and gamification to anchor these habits right into their muscle memory. And finally, use a structured progression to guide them systematically through the 4 stages of independence. We have covered a massive amount of high-level professional strategy today. But look, knowledge without execution is completely useless. So I'm going to leave you with this final, crucial question. Which specific hygiene routine are you going to systematically redesign for your child tonight using these behavioral frameworks? Pick one routine, whether that's dimming the lights for bath time or downloading a toothbrushing app, and implement it immediately. Thank you for attending this masterclass, and good luck executing these strategies.